Hey, I'm Dave Acosta, and this is my daughter Courtney, and we want to welcome you back to the U Tactical Academy Law Enforcement YouTube channel. So, one thing that's really important as you get ready to start the testing process is, let me just share my experience. I tested at 3 different departments because I was told back then that it takes 3 attempts typically before a cop figures out the testing process and does well enough to get hired. So, you know, Courtney's going to mention that right now, but I just want you to know that you may not get it on the first shot. So anyway, that said, I want to turn it over to Courtney, who has just finished the process and is a recent hire. You know, she's been on the street for a few years now, but still in the last 3 years, you were in the middle of this process. Can you share with us in outline form what are the steps that they need to anticipate as they test?
Absolutely. And just to touch really quick on what Dave was just saying about his experience in North Las Vegas and that area as far as testing, where he was advised that sometimes it takes people 3 tries. What we're saying is just don't put all your eggs in one basket. Test for multiple agencies that you're interested in, just in case you aren't a good fit for maybe that time period for your dream department. That's not to say that you might not be in the future. So, plus, testing for multiple departments is going to give you a good amount of experience, and you're only going to get better. As you test further at different departments, your testing is only going to get better, more crisp, more to the point, which is what people are looking for as far as like oral boards and stuff go. It'll get easier. So I'm just going to touch on just the categories you're going to be tested in. This will be a very simple video. It's going to be the basics. We're not going to go in depth on any of the categories because those will be further videos. And we'll also, in other videos, we'll give you resources where you can further your knowledge on that subject, okay? So most departments are going to start with the test that will cost them the least amount of money, which is the physical test. They might pay a little bit of overtime to the guys who are running the numbers and keeping times. But that physical test will usually be first. After that, it may or may not be the written or the oral board. I'm not sure what order it will be in. For sake of this video, I'm just going to say it's going to be the physical test, the written test, the oral board.
And that's pretty typical. It really is, because the oral board is going to, you know, that's something that they have to schedule. So typically they go physical, passed it, go to the written, passed it, go to the oral board.
Right. The oral boards are very time consuming. So if you can't pass the written or the physical, they don't want to spend as much time as they're going to in the oral board. So the written test will be next. So I already said the physical test, then the written test. Now these written tests are going to be, it's either going to be a state test where they'll sometimes departments will require you to already have that state test done. So make sure that you're doing an adequate amount of research on each department you're testing for to make sure that you know if you need to have that state test done prior to testing. If you do, they will usually have you do a written test that will have a little bit more to do with their specific department. So it would be good to look into specifics about that jurisdiction. Anyway, after the written test, we'll go to the oral board. The oral board essentially is an interview where you're talking to 3 or 4 different officers. 3 or 4 different officers are going to be interviewing you. There may or may not be some type of leadership in there as well, like a sergeant, a captain, a lieutenant, and sometimes a citizen of the city as well. So just have that in mind. And then some departments, none of the 3 I tested for had this, and I'm not aware of a ton in Utah that do, but I do know that some departments require you to do a practical exam as well. In the practical, they'll be asking you to react physically in a scenario to some type of a problem. So just have that in mind. Like I said, it pays to do a decent amount of research on each department that you're testing for so that you do know what to expect. You'll know if you need to prepare yourself for that practical or not, or have the state test done or not before you test.
And as you do that research, that should include, meaning you would go, like, for example, if I was testing at Courtney's department and she was a friend of mine, that should be part of my research. Hey, what was the test that you know, what did the process include? Talk to people that have been recent hires at the department you're going to, if possible, and find out what that process is so that you shouldn't lose sleep over the fact that there's going to be a practical and you're thinking you're going to have to tackle somebody. Talk to someone and they'll explain to you that's not what will happen. They're going to stand you up and say, here's the situation, defuse it, and then they're going to have two people role play and they're just going to see how your verbal judo is or how you handle confrontation. So talk to someone that's recently been there. That should be part of your research.
Part of your research also, ride-alongs. So pretty much every department I've ever heard of does ride-alongs. So also look into that program. So we've said physical, written, oral boards. And then typically after that, you've kind of passed those 3 tiers, you'll move on to the final interview process. And that may be different at each department. When I say final interviews, I'm talking like the captains. Maybe all the captains will interview you. And then after that, you go into a chief's interview where the chief's going to sit down with you and interview you. Those second and third interviews are usually going to be a little bit less nerve-wracking than that first one. Anyway, we'll go into detail about those again in another video if we need to. So after this whole process, you're going to move into the kind of the final phase. This would be after you have received a conditional offer. When I say conditional offer, it's because it's conditional on you passing some other stuff. So after they give you an offer, they're going to say, okay, we need you to pass a physical exam, which is just your basic physical exam, really, where you go into a doctor's office. Like a medical exam. Yeah. Just like you would get in high school for sports. You have to show up with a paper that says, hey, I'm okay. So that they want you to get that physical. They are going to have you take a psychological evaluation of some sort, a polygraph exam, and then they're going to do a very thorough background check on you. This is worth noting really quick. That very thorough background check, they're going to find anything that you decided not to tell them about in your paperwork or the oral board. And that will look really bad if there was anything that you didn't want them to find out about. They're going to find out about it. So just make sure that you're super honest throughout this entire process. And honestly,
don't worry about it.
No pun intended, but honesty is the best quality that you can possess during this.
There is no one without sin. Don't worry about it. Be honest in your polygraph and in your oral boards, and that will go a long way. I promise you.
I remember I've
sat on these oral boards before. I know.
In my oral board, one of the captains that was in there said, "Now listen, we're not looking for perfect people. We're just looking for honest people. So." Don't go in there thinking that you have to have never done anything wrong. That's not what we're trying to tell you here. We're just saying be honest about everything, because you would hate to get this far in a testing process at a department and then get dropped in the background check because you weren't honest about something. So anyway, that's it for this video. It's very basic, like we said. I'm just going to touch on everything really quick again. You're going to go physical test, written test, oral board, final interviews, and then after they give you a conditional offer, it'll be a medical examination, a polygraph, a psychological evaluation, and a background check. So that's pretty much all you need to know as far as what to expect generally in each testing process.
One important detail as we close this video out, you're probably thinking, well, what's the time frame? Let me just throw that out there really quick. Your physical and your written, a lot of times will happen on the same day or in a 24-hour period. Everyone will do the physical on Tuesday, for example, and then Wednesday, anyone that passed the physical is now scheduled for the written exam. Those typically happen pretty close to each other, and then they schedule out the oral boards depending on how many people are testing for the department. That oral board could be scheduled sometime in that week or the next week. So after that, they do your scoring, and then you start moving on to what Courtney described as that second phase, where the department starts to spend money on your background and your physical and your psychological testing, and that process is drawn out. That's a longer process. They'll schedule you out for these things. So anyway, the first part happens within a few days. The other things, could
just gotta be patient.
Yeah, they could be a few months. Yeah. So anyway, all right, guys. Good luck, and we hope this was informative. And if you have comments or suggestions or questions, please just put them here in the comments below, and we'll address those as soon as possible.
Thanks guys.